In recent news that has sent shockwaves throughout the international auto and energy industries, Canada has taken a dramatic step by excluding Tesla from its electric vehicle (EV) subsidy program and freezing 43 million Canadian dollars in rebate funds. This decision, rooted in accusations that Tesla was essentially gaming the system to exploit its subsidy program, comes at a time when the company was riding high on momentum, having sold over 8,700 vehicles in just one weekend at 4 dealerships across the country, averaging one Tesla car sold every 30 seconds. The allegations suggest that just before the subsidy program's budget expired, Tesla demanded a rebate of up to 43 million Canadian dollars, a move the Canadian government interpreted as a blatant abuse of the system. In response, Canada's Minister of Transport, Chrystia Freeland, ordered a sweeping investigation of every record in question and immediately halted all payments to Tesla. This unfolding drama raises critical questions about whether Tesla can prove that its actions were fully legal, or if there was, indeed, manipulation at play. When regulators suspect that a high-profile company might be exploiting a system meant to promote sustainable transportation, the ensuing investigation tends to attract not only national attention, but also international scrutiny. Some voices have even hinted that the episode might be less about regulatory compliance and more indicative of a broader pattern of politically charged retaliation. For instance, political observers have drawn parallels to events following President Donald Trump's announcement of a 25% tariff on cars imported from Canada, an announcement that was made less than a week before the subsidy scandal erupted. This juxtaposition has led to claims that Tesla, led by CEO Elon Musk, who is known to be a close advisor to Trump, may have become an unwitting pawn in a larger geopolitical chess game. Prime Minister Mark Carney was particularly vocal, declaring that we will not use Canadian taxpayers' money to fund an American company manipulating the market and breaking the rules. This statement, loaded with both conviction and underlying tension, appears to signal a political attack on the part of Canadians, aimed at protesting not only the U.S. tariff decision, but also the nexus of relationships linking Musk and Trump. While some have suggested that this decision is a calculated political retaliation against American policies, other international voices have begun to chime in. Federal leaders and economists have raised alarms about the broader implications for the global supply chain. European Commission President Ursula von der Leyen confirmed that the EU stands ready to defend its businesses against Trump's tariff policies. Similarly, Brazilian President Luiz Inácio Lula da Silva warned that the U.S. tariff policy is stifling free trade and weakening the multilateral trading system. Even familiar players in the automotive sector, such as the German Automotive Association, have denounced Trump's policies, characterizing them as a threat to the entire global supply chain. With critics questioning whether a trade war could spiral out of control, the united front of international leaders is seemingly determined to put pressure on the U.S. in hopes of redirecting its policies away from unilateralism and toward a more balanced multilateral approach. Meanwhile, the ramifications of this dispute extend well beyond the confines of a single company or country. Tesla, a long-standing leader in the EV sector, now finds itself navigating a landscape marked not only by regulatory headwinds in Canada, but also by intensifying competition from major rivals. Companies such as China's BYD, innovative newcomers like NIO, and traditional stalwarts including Ford and General Motors, GM, are all vying for market share in a rapidly expanding industry. Even though Tesla currently maintains a dominant position within the electric vehicle market, these emerging challenges are forcing the company to question whether it can sustain its momentum amidst relentless pressure from both domestic and international competitors. One might even quip, with a touch of irony, that Tesla's market strategy is now like trying to steer a rocket ship through turbulent atmospheric re-entry, exciting, perilous, and full of unplanned detours. As the battle lines are drawn in the auto and energy sectors, Canada itself appears determined to recast its economic future. The nation is boldly stepping away from a historical reliance on its southern neighbors' market dynamics by seeking to build a more independent economy. Prime Minister Carney has been an outspoken advocate for this long-term vision, frequently emphasizing the need to develop an economy that is ultimately controlled by the Canadian people. Yet Canada faces significant challenges in achieving this objective, particularly in its complex economic relationship with the United States. Ontario, one of Canada's most economically pivotal provinces, recently announced that it would impose a 25% tariff on electricity exports to the U.S., a move that sends a clear message about the extent of Canada's willingness to leverage its resources in a trade dispute. With Canada supplying not just electricity but also critical resources like over 70 billion US dollars worth of crude oil and 9 billion cubic meters of LNG annually to the US, the stakes of this confrontation are nothing short of staggering. If one imagines the situation with a dash of sarcasm, it almost seems as if Canada is holding a giant off switch over the US economy, a power so absolute that it might as well come with an instruction manual titled How to Dim the American Dream in 3 Easy Steps. The interconnected nature of modern trade means that any significant disruption is bound to ripple across multiple sectors. In this case, political maneuvers by Canada are not only aimed at protecting national interests, but may also trigger a cascading impact across the U.S. economy. For instance, following President Trump's imposition of a 25% tariff on imported automobiles, a policy intended to buoy domestic industries, the Canadian government retaliated by revoking tax incentives for U.S. electric vehicles, particularly those manufactured by Tesla. The potential fallout from this tit-for-tat strategy could be severe. Car prices in the U.S. might experience significant surges, and an ensuing parts crisis in Detroit's auto plants could drive production costs to unprecedented levels. GM's shares tumbled by 5% at one point, and the Dow Jones experienced a loss of over 540 points on a day when political rhetoric reached fever pitch. These immediate and drastic market reactions underscore just how interwoven modern economies truly are, where a single tariff or policy shift has the power to upend established industries overnight. In a broader context of economic volatility, the implications for the global supply chain are particularly concerning. Energy markets, automotive production lines, and even agricultural sectors are feeling the tremors of this geopolitical conflict. Canada, in addition to leveraging its vast energy resources as a bargaining chip, has emerged as a key player in reshaping trade relationships worldwide. For example, the country now supplies not only critical energy resources, but also agricultural products including canola, wheat, meat, and dairy that together comprise nearly 45 billion US dollars in trade goods exchanged annually. In a particularly dramatic twist, Prime Minister Carney has threatened to impose retaliatory tariffs on canola, a product that accounts for 6 billion US dollars in annual US market value, further underscoring the vulnerability of the North American economic system. As the world watches, it is becoming increasingly clear that Canada is not simply playing defense. It is actively crafting a new, more independent trade policy aimed at diminishing the traditional influence of the U.S. Amid these complex developments, questions remain about the fate of Tesla and the future of the electric vehicle market. With its exclusion from Canada's subsidy program and mounting pressure from emerging competitors, Tesla is now at a crossroads. The company's ability to innovate, adapt, and maintain its market share in an environment rife with political and economic turbulence will be crucial. Observers are split on whether Tesla can successfully weather these challenges or if it will eventually cede ground to newer, more agile competitors. Some industry experts contend that even a company as revolutionary as Tesla must inevitably evolve in response to global trends and market pressures, while others remain skeptical of its long-term prospects given the strategic actions being taken by countries like Canada to reconfigure their economic alliances. This period of transformation extends far beyond the auto market. It is a microcosm of a larger, global reordering of power and influence. The repercussions of Canada's economic maneuvers are reverberating through every corner of international trade. The escalation in trade tensions has prompted European and Asian nations to explore alternative supply chains and strategic partnerships. Preliminary agreements with countries such as France and the UK regarding energy and automotive supply chains indicate that Canada is actively positioning itself as a not-so-subservient player on the global stage. In doing so, Ottawa is laying the groundwork for a future where North American economic dominance is no longer taken for granted and where countries are emboldened to employ economic sanctions and tariffs as tools of both defense and strategic negotiation. On the energy front, the stakes could not be higher. Canada's decision to halt critical energy exports has left the U.S. facing an escalating crisis. For years, Canada maintained its position as the foremost energy supplier to the United States, delivering indispensable resources such as crude oil, LNG, and electricity. Yet as tensions have mounted, Canada has not hesitated to use this leverage to assert its economic independence. With over 70 billion US dollars in crude oil and 9 billion cubic meters of LNG flowing into American markets annually, and electricity that powers key regions, the potential for Canada to disrupt the U.S. energy supply is both real and alarming. For the U.S., a disruption of this magnitude may not just mean temporarily darkened homes or increased utility costs. It could signal the onset of structural economic challenges that may affect every facet of daily life, from soaring gas prices to escalating production costs in major industries. It is within this milieu that the global significance of these developments should not be underestimated. A carefully orchestrated strategy on Canada's part to pivot its trade relationships toward Europe and Asia could not only reduce its dependence on the U.S., but also reshape the global energy balance. With long-term contracts already signed with major energy markets such as China and India, Canada's new alliances might well provide these regions with a stable alternative to traditional suppliers. Meanwhile, markets are left to wonder about the implications for U.S. states like New York, California, and Michigan, which now face the very real possibility of rolling blackouts during the harsh winter months. As electricity prices continue to surge and industries brace for potential energy shortages, the reality solidifies. The economic interdependence that once characterized U.S.-Canada relations is rapidly evolving into a high-stakes power play. While many details are yet to be finalized, the message is unmistakable. The era of unquestioned economic integration between the U.S. and Canada is over. With retaliatory tariffs looming over industries ranging from automotive and energy to agriculture, both nations are poised on the brink of a trade war that could have lasting consequences for global markets and everyday consumers alike. This is not merely a political spat. These economic decisions are set to significantly influence manufacturing costs, consumer prices, and even job security across multiple sectors. As GM shares drop, forecasted price hikes range between $4,000 and $10,000 per vehicle, and production costs soar. It becomes apparent that the economic fallout of these tensions may linger for years. One might joke, in the midst of all this heated rhetoric, that the U.S. auto industry is now in a remake of a classic action flick. Except this time, the explosions are financial, and the heroes are desperately trying to dodge falling stock prices rather than bullets. Given the extraordinary circumstances, it's essential for viewers to engage with these news developments actively. If you find this analysis as intriguing as it is complex, consider subscribing to our channel and sharing your thoughts by liking and commenting on this video. Your engagement helps broaden the conversation and ensures that critical issues like these reach a wider audience. So what do you think about the implications of Canada's bold economic moves on Tesla, U.S. trade policies, and the broader energy crisis? We invite you to share your opinions in the comments below and join the discussion about how these unfolding events might shape our global future. As we move forward, it is worth reflecting on what these events reveal about contemporary international relations and economic strategy. In a world where every decision can trigger a cascade of repercussions across multiple markets, the interplay between political decisions and economic outcomes is more evident than ever before. Canada's strategic moves, whether through freezing subsidy funds or leveraging vital energy exports, appear to signal a turning point in global trade diplomacy. The traditional dynamics of dependency and cooperation between neighboring nations are being upended, replaced by an assertive assertion of national sovereignty and economic self-determination. In this new landscape, countries are increasingly willing to utilize all available resources, from energy supplies to agricultural commodities, as instruments of geopolitical influence. This fluid and tumultuous environment also poses challenging questions for industry giants like Tesla. Will innovative companies be able to maintain their competitive edge in the face of strategic retaliations and shifting alliances? Or will new market entrants prove to be more adaptable in an era where state-led economic policies can have as much impact as technological breakthroughs? The automotive industry, once defined by rapid innovation and fierce competition, now finds itself negotiating the uncertain terrain of politically driven economic warfare. Experts warn that sustaining growth in such a volatile climate might require recalibrating business models, fostering more flexible supply chains, and forging deeper international partnerships that are less vulnerable to the whims of unilateral tariff policies. Such transformations are not confined solely to the technology and transportation sectors. The ripple effects extend to energy markets, manufacturing, and even consumer behavior. With the threat of rising prices and supply chain disruptions, both consumers and businesses may need to brace for an extended period of economic volatility. Some might argue that this could ultimately lead to a more balanced global economy where nations are less beholden to one another's policies. Others, however, caution that the fallout could exacerbate economic disparities and create long-term instability in sectors that are already struggling under the pressures of rapidly changing global dynamics. In reviewing these developments from an analytical standpoint, it is evident that the intricate web of trade, energy, and political alliances is transforming before our eyes. The actions taken by Canada are not isolated incidents. Rather, they are indicative of a broader shift in international relations, a shift where economic independence and strategic autonomy are becoming paramount concerns. As countries seek to redefine their roles on the global stage, every decision, every tariff, and every trade negotiation becomes a potent mix of economics and geopolitics, with repercussions that may be felt for decades to come. The unfolding saga of trade wars, tariff impositions, and economic brinkmanship serves as a stark reminder that in our interconnected world, no nation truly operates in isolation. The interplay between domestic policies and international strategies is increasingly evident, and the cost of miscalculation can be steep for both governments and consumers. By scrutinizing the actions of leaders like President Trump and Prime Minister Carney alike, we see that the pursuit of national interest often requires navigating a minefield of competing priorities, where even well-intentioned policies can inadvertently ignite conflicts that spiral far beyond their original scope. In conclusion, this period of global uncertainty, marked by Canada's aggressive economic repositioning, Tesla's regulatory challenges, and the looming threat of energy shortages in the U.S., demands close attention from policymakers, industry leaders, and everyday consumers alike. The inevitable question remains, can the intricate balance between political ambition and economic stability be maintained in an era where a single policy misstep could trigger widespread disruption? As you ponder this crisis of unprecedented scale, we encourage you to engage actively with the discussion. Do you believe the U.S. can navigate its current pitfalls, or will the escalating tensions trigger a more profound recession and sustained market instability? Your insights and perspectives in the comments below are invaluable. This analysis is intended to provide an in-depth, expert perspective on a rapidly evolving situation that holds profound implications for industries worldwide. While some may jest that the current economic climate is like an elaborate game of chess, with each nation moving its pieces while hoping none of the kings gets checkmated, the reality is that these decisions affect millions of lives in tangible ways. As we continue to monitor events and their fallout, rest assured that our channel remains committed to bringing you timely, analytical, and unflinching coverage of every twist and turn in this unfolding saga. Subscribe for more detailed updates and share your thoughts on whether these actions will usher in a new era of economic self-reliance or leave us all scrambling in the dark during an energy winter.